Welcome back. This is Bev Turner in for Neil Oliver tonight. I know it's a disappointment, but what can you do? It's disappointing for me as well. I'd normally be sat at home watching him. Now, before the break, we were discussing what woke actually means, and I'm joined now by the author of How Woke Won, Joanna Williams. Good evening, Jo. Thank you for joining us. I know you're at a conference this evening. So you heard me, maybe you heard me talking at the top of the show about the definition of woke. And do you feel that it's a word that is fully understood? Because I think there's a huge amount of confusion and ambiguity around it. And I don't think language works unless we all agree on what the words mean.
No, I think you're absolutely right. There is a lot of confusion around this word, but I think people instinctively know woke when they see it. We know when we're being force-fed a diet of diversity that we didn't sign up to, when we're being force-fed inclusion, when we're being kicked out of our bank accounts. We recognise when we come up against things that are going on in society that we haven't actually voted for, that we didn't actually ask to be part of, that we feel as if are being kind of pushed upon us. So I think we do recognise it when we see it. But the beauty, if you like, of woke for the advocates of these policies is that they can then stand back and deny. They can say, oh, no, we're not woke. There's no such thing as woke. You don't even know what the word means. So how can you complain about these things?
I'm fascinated by this idea, Jo, that a word that is so powerful and yet nobody will claim to be it, and yet it underpins so much of our life, as I was saying at the top of the show. Do you ever come across anybody in your work as an academic or in writing this book who would see themselves as woke and say proudly, yes, I am a woke person, I represent these values, I live them?
I mean, I think a few years ago, definitely. Now what you get more is people saying, well, of course some people will say, of course I'm woke. And we've even had police officers coming out and saying, well, why wouldn't you be woke? But then they follow that up by saying, well, because all woke means is that you're interested in equality, you're not racist, you're not sexist, you're not homophobic. So who could possibly be against this? Who would be anti-woke? But I have a problem with that because I think that's actually really disingenuous. You know, I'm not racist, I'm not sexist, I'm not homophobic, but I wouldn't describe myself as woke because what woke means is something more than that. It implies an element of coercion, an element of compulsion, and a kind of authoritarian approach to really enforcing a specific set of values upon people.
How significant is it, Jo, that Nigel Farage has blown a hole in this corporate culture this week?
I think it's massive, and I think he's done everybody a favour by really exposing what's going on here. I mean, I absolutely take my hat off to him. It's something which is badly needed because I think what it shows is the fact that it doesn't really matter if no individuals go around calling themselves woke, because what we've got is the complete institutionalisation of a set of values. These values have been incorporated as part of a kind of bureaucracy that we have to confront in our everyday lives now. And, you know, on the one hand, it's just incredibly foolish to have taken away Nigel Farage's bank account. You know, he's a well-known public figure. He's a major feature of the international political stage. So the sheer arrogance that led them to think they could get away with doing this without there being a backlash, I think really speaks again to the authoritarianism of the people who are driving this agenda.
One thing that really struck me from your book, Jo, is that whilst we're talking about skin colour and gender to some degree as well, the one thing that I think does hold people back in life in terms of opportunity is actually social class. And that gets cast into the shadow, doesn't it, in so many of these conversations of around woke. And that's something I think we should probably be committing more time to think about. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And I think in some ways that's the beauty of woke values for the people who run elite institutions, that it allows them to present themselves as being very politically correct, very in favour of equality, at the same time without really making any difference whatsoever to the way that society is organised. Poor people will stay poor because the woke agenda is not going to have any impact upon that whatsoever. You know, they can play around and tinker and kind of bedeck banks in rainbow flags, but people without money will still be people without money.
What's the next stage for woke in our culture? I mean, it's different, I would say, next week than it would have been 2 weeks ago if this hadn't all happened. What do you predict happening now, Jo?
Well, one thing that really heartens me is I think the only way really to push back and challenge woke is through democracy, is through the ballot box. And I think obviously we saw with Brexit, we've seen even with the recent by-election and the way that that's led people to question the whole expansion of ULEZ, the low emission traffic zone. I think democracy is actually pushing our political leaders to question the values that they've been promoting. And I think that's a really positive development. I think the more people see of woke, the less they like it. And now we just need the opportunity to be able to put these things to the test in the ballot box. And, I think a great thing that's come out of what Nigel Farage has experienced with Coutts is that it's helped to shine that kind of sunlight, the disinfectant that comes with sunlight, and actually expose what's going on and bring it home to people. And I think another important thing that happened, that's really worth a mention is the fact that this happened to Gina Miller too, who was the pro-Remain person, who really pushed that. And I think that showed people on the left who were arguing, this is just a Nigel Farage problem, that actually it's not. This is a problem of banks and our institutions. And if this could happen to Nigel Farage, if it could happen to Gina Miller, this could happen to any one of us. So it's in all of our interests to be pushing back and challenging what's going on here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jo.